There's a moment, maybe you've felt it, when you're stuck in traffic, late for work, your phone buzzing non-stop, news alerts lighting up the screen with chaos, fear, outrage, and then someone cuts you off in traffic. You grip the wheel a little tighter, your jaw clenches, and for a split second, you want to scream, but you don't. Not because you're calm, but because you're numb. It's not peace, it's pressure, and it builds every single day. Modern life wasn't built for calm. It wasn't built for stillness or clarity. It was engineered, whether we admit it or not, to keep you reactive, distracted, emotionally hijacked. Anger isn't just a side effect of our times. It's a product, something we're sold, something we're baited into. Every headline that stokes your outrage, every algorithm that rewards your impulsive reaction, every system that drains your attention, they're all part of the same machine. The modern world profits from your instability. But over 2,000 years ago, a few men saw this coming. They didn't predict smartphones or social media. They didn't need to, because the core mechanisms, ego, fear, pleasure, pain, approval, haven't changed. Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor, Epictetus, a former slave, Seneca, a wealthy statesman, each of them walked through a world not unlike ours, crowded, political, driven by gossip and ambition and public rage. And in the middle of it all, they chose something radical: stillness, the ability to see clearly through chaos, the power to feel everything but be ruled by none of it. You might be thinking, sure, but their world wasn't this insane. But it was. Rome was a theater of power games, betrayal, and spectacle. People were literally entertained by death in colosseums. Political assassinations were daily news. Public opinion was volatile and dangerous. Replace scrolls with smartphones, chariots with traffic, colosseums with Twitter, and you'll see. The triggers changed, but the trap stayed the same. And the Stoics, they were architects of escape. They didn't run away from the noise. They walked right into it, but remained untouched. Epictetus, with nothing but his mind, taught that no one could make you angry without your consent. Marcus Aurelius, ruling the most powerful empire in the world, reminded himself daily, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. They weren't detached out of privilege. They practiced detachment because the world around them demanded it. And our world demands it even more. Because today, your attention is currency. Your rage is engagement. Your reaction feeds a digital economy. If you're calm, if you're indifferent to every manufactured crisis, you're bad for business. That's why algorithms prioritize outrage. That's why news networks left and right use fear like a drug. That's why influencers provoke rather than inspire, because a centered, self-governed man doesn't click impulsively. He doesn't consume endlessly. He doesn't argue with strangers in comment sections. But here's the thing, you weren't born for this noise. Your nervous system wasn't designed for 24/7 alerts. Your soul wasn't meant to chase approval from invisible audiences. You were meant for clarity, for control, for peace. Have you ever noticed how quiet it gets when you step away from the chaos? Not just in your environment, but in your mind. That's not emptiness, that's your baseline. That's the real you before the world started pulling strings. Stoic philosophy doesn't ask you to become a monk or a robot. It asks you to return, to come back to yourself, to realize that every time you get angry at things you cannot control, you're surrendering your power. And this is where the battle really is. Not out there, but in here. What if the enemy wasn't people, politics, or the pace of modern life, but your automatic reaction to them? What if every frustration was an invitation, every delay a training ground? What if the world wasn't trying to destroy you, but trying to teach you how to transcend? Because that's what the Stoics believed. The obstacle is the way. When someone insults you, that's your opportunity to practice restraint. When life feels unfair, that's your chance to develop endurance. When chaos swirls around you, that's your test. Can you stay rooted, or will you be moved like a leaf in the wind? This isn't easy. In fact, it's brutal. But the rewards are unlike anything else. Imagine walking through life with the kind of presence that can't be shaken, a calm that unsettles loud people, a discipline that refuses to dance to the world's tune. That's Stoicism. And it's not outdated, it's more relevant now than ever. Sometimes I wonder what Marcus Aurelius would think if he saw our world today. Would he be surprised at our technology? Maybe, but I don't think he'd be surprised by our suffering. He wrote, "External things are not the problem. It's your assessment of them, which you can erase right now." Let that sink in. You can erase the anger, the resentment, the anxiety, not by fixing the world, but by fixing your lens. That's power. Think about the last time you got upset, really upset. What were you reacting to? Someone's words, a post online, a delay, a disrespect, a disappointment? Now ask yourself, did your anger help you? Did it solve anything? Or did it drain you, distract you, distort your peace? Maybe it's time we stop seeing anger as strength. Maybe it's time we realize that real strength is control. And this doesn't mean you suppress or ignore emotions. Stoicism isn't coldness, it's clarity. It's feeling fully without being enslaved. It's choosing your response instead of being chosen by your impulses. Pause for a moment. Feel that? That quiet between your thoughts? That's where your freedom lives. There's a small coffee shop on the edge of a noisy downtown street. No sign, no music, just the smell of roasted beans and the sound of silence between sips. An older man sits in the corner every morning. Same seat, same order. No phone, no laptop, just him and his thoughts. People pass by, glance in, puzzled. In a world sprinting on dopamine and digital noise, he's an anomaly. But to the Stoics, he's exactly what a man should be, anchored. We live in a time when everything is faster than it needs to be. Conversations aren't conversations, they're performances. Opinions aren't carefully shaped, they're blurted and blasted. We've lost the pause, the gap, the breath before reaction, and without that, we've lost ourselves. The Stoics taught that freedom isn't in doing whatever you feel, it's in mastering what you feel. If you can be provoked, you can be controlled. If you can be insulted, you can be led. That's why they train daily, not in gyms, but in thought. Every morning, Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, people will be rude, selfish, arrogant. That's not pessimism, that's preparation. And here's the paradox of modern life. We prepare for everything but ourselves. We prepare for the economy to crash. We prepare for emergencies, delays, disasters. But we don't prepare our minds for insult, our hearts for betrayal, or our souls for restlessness. And so we become fragile, easily shaken, easily offended, easily addicted to outrage. But imagine if you could train for this life, not to escape it, but to endure it gracefully. Here's a truth we don't say enough. The world is not going to calm down, but you can. Let that idea land fully. Because if you're waiting for the world to become less chaotic so you can finally breathe, you'll be waiting forever. Instead, the Stoics invite you to become the calm within the storm, the eye in the hurricane, the rock in the river. And that's not just poetic, it's practical. Think about it. Your power comes from how little you need to be okay. If you need others to behave, if you need the internet to agree with you, if you need things to be fair, you've given away your freedom. The Stoics knew this. They walked through plagues, betrayals, exile, even torture, and held on to their inner ground. You might be thinking, that sounds impossible in today's world. But maybe the impossibility is the point. Maybe this world was never meant to be tamed, but to be transcended. Every moment you practice stillness in the face of madness, you reclaim a piece of yourself. Maybe you're in a job that drains you. Maybe you scroll past headlines that make your blood boil. Maybe you're tired of always being on edge, waiting for the next thing to trigger you. But what if the trigger isn't out there? What if the world is just pulling on strings that you haven't cut yet? You see, the Stoics didn't try to eliminate stress from life. They eliminated the illusion that stress was in control. They separated what they could control, thoughts, judgments, responses, from what they couldn't, outcomes, events, other people's behavior. That distinction was their shield, their sanctuary, their superpower. You can use it too. Let's say someone talks down to you. Your instinct might be to defend, to fire back, to prove them wrong. But what if you didn't? What if you remembered that their words say more about them than you? What if you just observed the moment, like watching a cloud drift across the sky and then let it go? That's not weakness, that's sovereignty. What if the next time someone tried to provoke you, you smiled, not sarcastically, but peacefully, because you saw the game and you chose not to play? You don't have to win every argument. You don't have to react to every jab. You don't have to correct every misunderstanding. Sometimes your greatest power is silence. Not the silence of fear, but the silence of mastery. Picture a man walking through a crowd, shouting at him, pointing fingers, laughing, but he doesn't flinch, not because he doesn't feel it, but because he knows who he is. That's what Stoic presence looks like. Not robotic, not detached, but deeply rooted. We're all chasing something in modern life, validation, recognition, peace. But the more we chase, the more it slips. Because peace isn't out there, it's in here, always has been. There's a story about Epictetus. A powerful man once threatened to cut off his head if he didn't comply. Epictetus replied calmly, "Go ahead. But even if you kill me, you can't harm me." He wasn't being arrogant, he was being invincible, in the truest sense, because no one can touch a man who owns himself completely. How would your life change if you walked with that kind of freedom? Pause for a second, ask yourself this: what owns me? Is it anger? Is it the fear of being misunderstood? The pressure to keep up? The craving to be seen, heard, praised? If any of those things own you, then the world controls you, not directly, but subtly, constantly. The Stoics weren't immune to these things. They just learned how to disarm them. Seneca once wrote, "You act like mortals in all that you fear, and like immortals in all that you desire." He was pointing at something most of us ignore. We rush like we'll live forever, chasing every shiny object, and we fear like we're about to die at the first hint of discomfort. But what if you flipped that? What if you slowed down, knowing time is short, and faced discomfort, knowing you'll survive it? This is what Stoicism gives us, not control over life, but clarity within it. And clarity is rare these days. It's rare to see a man who isn't frantically checking his phone, who listens without waiting for his turn to speak, who doesn't need to prove anything. That kind of man is powerful, not because of what he owns, but because of what he doesn't need. And maybe that's the real rebellion today, not to yell louder than the crowd, but to stand so still that the crowd notices their own noise. Can you feel it? That pull toward stillness, toward less. That whisper that says, you don't need more noise, you need more silence. That's not weakness, that's your true self calling you back. There was a man I knew, tough on the outside, the kind of guy who never cried, never hesitated, always had the answers. But something in his eyes changed over time. He started snapping at people more, lost sleep, drank more coffee, less water, scrolled through his phone like it held the key to his soul. One day he admitted almost in a whisper, "I'm always angry, and I don't even know why." He wasn't broken. He was just exhausted from fighting a war he didn't know he was in. A war against noise, against expectation, against a system that rewards reaction, punishes stillness, and mocks silence. And the worst part? He thought it was normal, like so many do. Modern life doesn't just want you angry. It wants you confused about why you're angry. Because when you're confused, you're easier to control. And when you're constantly reacting, you're not creating, you're not building, you're not reflecting, you're just surviving. But the Stoics, they weren't survivors. They were alchemists. They took the raw material of pain, of insult, of frustration, and they forged virtue, courage, wisdom, justice, temperance. They didn't avoid hardship. They absorbed it, transformed it. What if you could do that? What if every time life tried to provoke you, you saw it not as an attack, but as a chance? What if your enemy became your teacher? Your insult became your sharpening stone. You would become unbreakable, not because the world stopped attacking, but because it stopped mattering. That's the Stoic shift. You stop trying to make life easier. You make yourself stronger. You stop hoping people treat you better. You train to not be shaken when they don't. And here's where it gets interesting, because when you stop being moved by petty things, something strange happens. People start to respect you. Not the loud kind of respect, the quiet kind, the kind that notices how little it takes to shake others and how calm you remain. People feel that, even if they can't name it. It's the reason why a man who says little, who listens fully, who doesn't chase validation, draws more attention than the one who screams for it. In a world addicted to noise, silence becomes magnetic. Now imagine for a moment that you were that man, sitting in a meeting, insulted, misunderstood, and instead of rushing to defend yourself, you let it sit. You let others feel the weight of their words. You breathe. You speak slowly or not at all. You leave the room with your center intact. What would that feel like? Power, not force, not domination, but power. The kind that no one can give you and no one can take away. There's something almost sacred in that kind of presence, the kind that doesn't flinch, doesn't explain itself unnecessarily, doesn't collapse under pressure. It's not just emotional intelligence, it's spiritual muscle. And you build it not by avoiding triggers, but by facing them without flinching. You will be tested, not once, not twice, but daily, by strangers, by coworkers, by partners, by your own thoughts. But each test is a gift. Each insult is a weight added to your barbell of inner strength. The more you lift, the stronger you get, until one day, what used to shake you now sharpens you. That's when you know, yeah, you've moved. From being reactive to becoming responsive. From being loud to becoming deeply still. From being angry at the world to mastering your place within it. Let's be honest, anger is seductive. It makes you feel alive. It's easier to rage than reflect, easier to scroll than sit still. But easy is not the way of the Stoic. Easy is what keeps you stuck. If you want real peace, the kind that doesn't depend on silence outside but strength within, you have to do the harder thing. You have to slow down and feel everything without letting anything own you. That takes discipline, that takes presence. And presence in this age is revolutionary. It's revolutionary to put your phone down at dinner. It's revolutionary to not respond to that comment online. It's revolutionary to say, I need time to think, instead of rushing to speak. It's revolutionary to feel anger rise and let it pass like a wave, instead of riding it to destruction. This is not weakness, this is warrior work. You're not training to be passive, you're training to be deliberate. Because the world has enough noise, enough shouting, enough reaction. What it needs, what it's craving, is men and women who can sit still in the fire and not burn. And that begins with you. Maybe today you'll be interrupted. Maybe someone will try to pull you into their chaos. Maybe something you read will light a fire in your gut. But when it happens, pause. Feel the anger, acknowledge it, then step back from it. Say to yourself, like Epictetus taught, that's not me. That's just an impression. I choose how I respond. It might take everything you have, but every time you choose mastery over reaction, you rewrite who you are. There's no app for this, no shortcut, no instant download. It's built breath by breath, choice by choice. And that's why most don't do it. But you're not most people. You're here, listening, watching, searching not for tricks, but for truth. And the truth is, your calm is a threat to the system. A man who can't be baited is a man who can't be used. A man who doesn't chase pleasure is a man who can't be sold to. A man who isn't afraid of discomfort is a man who can't be manipulated. That man is dangerous in the best possible way. So don't be afraid to be different, to be boring even, to be the quiet one in the room, the thoughtful one, the one who doesn't need to prove, doesn't need to fight, doesn't need to win, because in that quiet, you're already winning. I once met a man who had lost everything, his business, his marriage, his sense of identity. For months he lived out of a van, not because he wanted to find himself, but because life had stripped him down to the bone. And yet, there was something in the way he sat across from me, sipping a black coffee, watching the rain run down the windshield, still, calm, even oddly at peace. He told me something I'll never forget. The worst part wasn't losing it all. The worst part was realizing how much I'd let the world own me before I lost it. That's the part most people miss. We think anger comes from injustice, from things being taken away, but more often it comes from the illusion that we ever owned those things to begin with. Status, image, control, other people's respect. And when that illusion shatters, we're left flailing. But Stoicism is about preemptively letting go. Not in a fatalistic way, but in a freeing one. The Stoics practice something called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evil. Every morning, they imagined what could go wrong, not to become paranoid, but to become prepared. What if my friend insults me? What if I lose my income? What if this person betrays me? It wasn't morbid, it was clarifying. Because when you've already made peace with the worst, the world loses its power over you. And when the world loses its grip, anger fades. You stop being surprised by people's selfishness. You stop expecting ease. You stop needing fairness to function. You become unshakable. And in today's climate, that's not just rare, it's revolutionary. We live in a culture that teaches us to personalize everything. A stranger's rude comment becomes a deep wound. A failed plan becomes a threat to our worth. But the Stoics, especially Epictetus, warned against this. It's not things that disturb us, he said, but our judgment about things. What if that traffic jam isn't a punishment? It's just traffic. What if that delay isn't sabotage? It's just time unfolding. What if you didn't take things so personally and you finally got your peace back? Let me ask you something. Who are you when no one else is around? No notifications, no arguments, no praise, just silence, just self. That's the version of you the Stoics cared about. Not the performative self, not the public self, the private one, the one that either panics in the quiet or breathes deeply in it. So many of us are running from that version, drowning ourselves in noise so we don't have to feel the discomfort of being alone with our thoughts. But that's where the Stoic lives. In that discomfort, in that pause, in that sacred inner space where everything feels stripped down and all that remains is choice. Because that's all you ever truly have, your response. People will lie, the world will twist, outcomes will surprise. But your power, your sovereignty, begins and ends with how you respond. No one can take that from you unless you hand it over. So when you find yourself boiling with anger at politics, at your boss, at your partner, at the world, ask yourself, is this anger mine or did I inherit it from a system that profits when I lose control? That's a question most people don't ask, because if they did, they might start to see just how manipulated they've been. But you're different. You're here, reading, listening, leaning into something deeper, because maybe you've sensed it, that modern life is a theater and anger is its favorite actor. But you don't have to play your part. You can step off the stage. You can write a different role. It begins with noticing the moments. That split second when someone cuts you off and your chest tightens. That passive-aggressive text that begs you to respond with fire. That news headline engineered to enrage you. Catch it, pause, breathe. That's your training ground. That's your Stoic gym. You're not trying to be indifferent, you're trying to be immune. Not to feeling, but to being controlled. by feeling, and over time you'll start to notice something strange. The more you practice calm, the more your mind clears. The more you detach from emotional bait, the more presence you gain. The less you chase justice in every interaction, the more peace you receive, not because the world got better, but because you got better at navigating it. There's a reason Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations at night. It wasn't for anyone else. It was for him to remember, to recalibrate, to bring himself back to center. You can do that too. Every night you can reflect, not with shame, but with honesty. Where did I react today? Where did I give away my peace? And then with love, you bring it back. Day by day, breath by breath. Until one day, someone shouts at you, and you smile. Until one day, the world burns with drama, and you pour another cup of tea. Until one day, anger knocks, and you don't answer the door. That day is closer than you think. A man once asked me, "But if I don't get angry, won't people walk all over me?" It's a fair question. We're taught from a young age that anger is how we protect ourselves, that to be strong is to raise your voice, clench your fists, fight back, show force. But the Stoics saw it differently. They didn't confuse stillness with submission. They understood the difference between reacting and responding. And that's the true mark of a powerful man, not how loud he gets, but how little he needs to. When Marcus Aurelius faced betrayal, war, and political pressure, he didn't lash out blindly. He didn't crumble. He didn't posture. He went inward. He wrote. He reflected. He strengthened the walls of his own mind. Because when your mind is a fortress, no one gets in without your permission. And the world hates that. It wants you fragile, dependent, enraged, because a man who needs anger to feel strong can be pushed, poked, and played like a puppet. But a man who owns his emotions, who can feel the fire rise, acknowledge it, and then let it burn out before it becomes destruction, is ungovernable in the best way. That's not passivity, that's precision. The Stoics weren't soft, they were steel, forged not by flattery or comfort, but by difficulty. And in that fire, they found their edge. There's a famous story about Cato the Younger, one of the few Stoics who held public office in Rome. He was incorruptible, immune to bribery, stubborn in virtue. One day he stood in the Senate, silent, while everyone else shouted about a new policy designed to consolidate power. When asked why he wouldn't engage, he simply said, "Noise does not equal reason, and I have nothing to prove." He didn't win every political battle, but he won something more valuable, himself. How many people today can say that they go to bed each night with their soul intact, that they didn't sell their peace to win a pointless debate, that they didn't trade their integrity for a moment of ego gratification, that they didn't get baited again into a battle that wasn't theirs to fight? This isn't about being better than others. It's about being better than you were yesterday. It's about waking up and saying, "I will not let the world decide how I feel today. I decide." You may not control traffic or your boss's mood or the algorithm, but you control the space between stimulus and response. That space is your power. Think of it like this: your emotions are like wild horses, strong, beautiful. But if you never learn to hold the reins, they'll drag you through every ditch and thorn bush on the road. Stoicism doesn't kill the horses, it trains the rider. And the more you train, the less chaos feels like a threat. Suddenly being insulted feels more like a test than an attack. Suddenly being misunderstood becomes an invitation to clarify or to walk away. Suddenly discomfort is no longer an enemy, it's a teacher. And what does it teach? That nothing external can disturb you unless you give it permission. That silence is not emptiness, it's control. That the more you pause, the clearer things become. We don't need more noise in this world. We need men and women who can sit quietly in a storm and not become part of it. We need people who can say, "Let it swirl, I'm not moved." That kind of presence is rare, but when someone embodies it, we all notice. We feel it in a room. We gravitate toward it because it feels like sanity in a world addicted to reaction. You don't need a robe and a mountain cave to be a Stoic. You just need to pause before the next angry comment. You just need to choose your peace over your pride. You just need to ask yourself, will this matter tomorrow? And if it won't, why give it your soul today? It's not that you'll never feel anger again. You will. The world will keep testing you, but each time you pass the test, you get stronger. You expand your inner space, and in that space, life gets quieter. Not because the world changed, but because you did. And so he walked out. He didn't slam the door, he didn't yell, he didn't leave a dramatic note. He just picked up his coat, turned the handle, and left the noise behind. That was Marcus, my client from 2 years ago, an attorney in DC who realized his life was one long courtroom, always litigating, always defending, always ready for a fight. But deep down, he didn't want to win arguments. He just wanted peace. And what gave him that peace wasn't therapy or wine or success. It was Stoic philosophy, that ancient, quiet power, reminding him that not everything deserved a reaction, that not all offenses needed a defense. He started waking up early, not because a YouTuber told him to, but because silence finally mattered. He stopped reading political news every morning. He turned notifications off. He took walks, not to burn calories, but to burn thoughts. And the strangest thing happened. His anger dissolved, not in some mystical way, but in a very real, grounded sense. Life still happened. People still cut him off. Judges still threw tantrums. But Marcus, he didn't flinch. He had returned to himself. And that's the Stoic way. It doesn't erase emotion, it governs it. It doesn't deny pain, it reframes it. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That's not just a quote for Instagram. That's a prescription for the modern man, for the modern world. And I get it, you're not Marcus. Maybe you're a teacher, a nurse, a father, a business owner, but the disease is the same: rage, noise, endless agitation. And so is the cure: stillness, clarity, self-command. Have you ever noticed how quickly things escalate now? A bad comment becomes a war, a long line becomes an insult, a political disagreement becomes an identity crisis. But what if you refused to play along? What if you didn't give them the reaction they wanted? You see, the Stoics didn't walk around stone-faced to look tough. They cultivated that inner stillness so they could respond to life rather than react. There's a world of difference between the two. Reaction is reflex, response is mastery. And here's what modern life doesn't want you to realize: that you actually have a choice. You don't have to scroll, you don't have to argue, you don't have to be outraged. You can choose clarity, you can choose detachment, you can choose yourself. But choosing yourself takes work. It means sitting in silence when everything screams for noise. It means walking away from drama when your ego wants to stay and fight. It means accepting that some people will misunderstand your calm as weakness and being okay with that. Let me tell you about another man I met, Tom, a construction foreman in Chicago. Tough guy, raised on grit, always had a quick temper. But after a heart scare, his doctor told him, "Stress will kill you faster than a jackhammer." That line hit him harder than any punch ever had. He picked up Meditations on a whim, thought it'd be boring, but that book became his Bible. Now, Tom keeps a journal in his truck. He writes 3 lines every morning. What can I control today? What doesn't deserve my energy? Where can I practice patience? That's it, no fancy quotes, just daily reminders to stay sane in a world designed to drive you mad. And Tom told me something I'll never forget. I used to think being calm made me soft. Now I know it makes me dangerous, in the right way. That's Stoic strength, the quiet kind, the grounded kind, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself, because it shows up in every action. Maybe it's time we stop feeding the fire that burns us. Maybe it's time we stop letting algorithms control our mood. Maybe it's time we listen, not to the news or the trolls or the noise, but to the voice inside that says, "Be still." There's a reason Marcus Aurelius meditated in the chaos of Rome. There's a reason Epictetus, once a slave, taught peace while living in pain. There's a reason Seneca could smile while awaiting death. Because they knew what we forget, that real power lies in not being disturbed. So if you're tired of being baited, if you're tired of always being on, always being triggered, always being reactive, maybe the answer isn't out there, maybe it's within. And the next time life shoves you, insults you, ignores you, ask yourself, do I want to feed this fire or do I want to be free? You already know the answer. So now, you have a choice. You can scroll on. You can let this video fade into the background of another noisy day, or you can sit still for just a moment longer. Ask yourself, what am I reacting to? And who would I be if I didn't let the world dictate my state of mind? You were not made to be a puppet of outrage. You were made to stand tall in the storm, to choose how you respond. That is the power the Stoics knew you always had. If this message stirred something in you, don't let it end here. Carry it into your day. And if you want to keep walking this path with stillness, with clarity, with purpose, join us. Subscribe. Stick around. This isn't just a philosophy, it's a way of life, and it's waiting for you to live it.